When I came to, I was sleeping in the kitchen. It appeared to still be night, and all I could see was a faint outline of the sink. I could hear the sound of the fridge motor running. I should have been sleeping in my bedroom, yet I lay in the kitchen with my futon and all. Had I moved in here half asleep? At any rate, I tried to move back to the bedroom, but I found myself powerless. I couldn't even move my neck. It had frozen, facing the sink. Before long, I took in everything around me. Someone was sitting in front of the sink. The person appeared to be tiny and hunched over. They sat politely with their legs folded beneath them. Judging by their appearance, it seemed to be an old woman. The old woman was staring at me. I couldn't see her facial features, but she seemed to be muttering something. But this was my room. Nobody else should have been in here. I wanted to ask who she was, but my muscles were lifeless and I couldn't even form the breath to ask. My mouth simply opened and closed like a fish. Then my blanket grew heavy. Seemed I was suffering from sleep paralysis. I'd once heard that in situations like this, you could do nothing but wait for it to break naturally. But there was an unknown old woman right in front of me. I couldn't stay there and do nothing. Plus, I didn't know why, but it felt like this paralysis was the old woman's work. As she muttered, the blanket grew heavier and heavier, like it was going to crush me. As I struggled, I summoned up all of my willpower and finally screamed. "Stop it!" With that, I woke up. I was lying in bed. My breathing labored and I was covered in sweat. I was covered in a thin sheet, not my normal, heavier blanket. I lay there for a while and realized as I looked around that I was in my bedroom. It was bright already. I finally sat up and wiped my sweat with the blanket. I peeked into the kitchen. Of course, nobody was there. I unconsciously sighed. Again? I'd only been living in this lodging for a month, yet I kept having the same dream over and over. It wasn't quite every single night, but it was always the same dream. I'd wake up in the kitchen, and that old lady would be sitting there. Then the blanket would get heavy and painful. I'd be exhausted when I woke up. The kitchen in my dream was so real, and I didn't feel like I was asleep, so it was exhausting. It was no different to insomnia. Maybe it was because of the heat. This year we seemed to be in the midst of a heat wave, and once we entered July, the hot nights continued. I opened the screen doors, but that just made it even hotter, and I couldn't sleep. And when I finally did, it was always that dream. It wasn't especially scary, but I'd had enough of it already. But I didn't have enough money to get air conditioning installed. I'd long wanted to get out of the student dorms, but there were few places I could afford, and it took a while before I found this place within my price range. I'd used all my savings just moving in. Plus, the walls of this place were so old that I was reluctant to open holes in them for the air conditioning pipes. The landlord wouldn't like that. Class was about to start. I couldn't go outside this sweaty in the morning. I had no shower in the bathroom, so I dunked some warm water over my head and got changed. As I left the house, it was already stinking hot, and there was a sharp smell of greenery. It was the smell of grass from the garden. The lodging I was renting was a detached house. It was a corner of a large house with a large yard. It was rather fashionable. I don't know if you could call it American style, but the outside consisted of long boards laid over the top of each other and then painted white. But it was still old, so the paint had turned dark and started to peel with the weather, and moss grew where it touched the ground. Apparently, when the landlord's mother had retired long ago, she had it built as a separate part of the house, with its own kitchen, toilet, bathroom, and other household necessities. Yet, that age gave it personality, and I quite liked it. Plus, it was cheaper than a single-room apartment. My parents didn't send me much money, so it was perfect for me. Apparently, that mother was now ill and spent all her time sleeping in the main bedroom. I'd never seen her before, but it wasn't like the house felt gloomy with someone ill inside. It probably wasn't that bad of an illness. When I looked over towards the main house, the landlord was moving the morning glory pots into the shade near the veranda. Perhaps this early morning sun wasn't very good for them. "Good morning," I said, and she smiled at me. "Ah, good morning. Are you off to school?" "Yes, I have classes right from first period today," I said, trying not to yawn. The landlord was a graceful woman. She probably wasn't even 50 yet. She was kind and friendly, and sometimes she even brought food over for me. She lived alone with her sick mother, so, according to her, it's nice to have a man around the house. But still, I was thankful she didn't interfere with me too much. I didn't really like dealing with people that much. That was why I wanted to leave the dorms. Sharing a room with 3 other people meant I was always face to face with someone, and it was suffocating. My head was still foggy when I got to university. The large Western-style buildings were rather cool in this weather. It felt so nice that I slept during class. I woke up as the bell rang. Class had long since finished, and I was the only person still in the room. It was like I was the only person left alive on the planet. I was still tired during lunchtime. I couldn't be bothered eating, so I lay down on the grass. The rays of the summer sun were so strong that I could still see red through my closed eyes. A shadow suddenly appeared. I opened my eyes. "What on earth are you doing, lazing about here?" A girl from my class looked down at me. "Yeah." I couldn't even be bothered to answer, so I grunted vaguely. I intended that to be a sign for her to leave me alone, but she didn't move. "The weather's so nice. Pull yourself together." I didn't think she'd shut up even if I ignored her. Reluctantly, I stood up. I was no good with women. No, I'd never really liked girls to begin with. I didn't really like dealing with people in general, but I especially didn't like dealing with women. Alarm bells went off if they even got close, and I found myself on edge. Most other girls seemed to notice and stayed away, but this one kept bothering me. I couldn't tell her that she was annoying me or ask her why, though. She seemed to notice how I felt, and then spoke to me as though ordering me around. "Come with me." "Why?" "Just do it." She yanked my sleeve and dragged me towards the student cafeteria. She plopped a bowl of katsudon before me. "You spent all of your allowance and skipped breakfast again, didn't you? Your complexion is terrible. Here, eat up. It's my treat." She spoke to me as though she were my mother. I grew annoyed. "I'm just tired." "From playing mahjong?" "No. I had a bad dream." "A dream? What kind?" She seemed interested. I didn't see any point in telling it, but it didn't look like she'd leave me alone anytime soon, so I told her what happened. She nodded deeply. "What do you think?" I don't think she's really trying to curse me, though. "Yeah, maybe it's an unconscious memory, or maybe it's some kind of common image that you associate with old houses. Kind of like a zashiki warashi." "Yeah, I don't know." I answered vaguely. I mean, first of all, zashiki warashi protect the owner of the house, right? And I'm the one being hurt. Then maybe it's a warning. Of what? I don't know, but the one thing that's clear is... She said, "that you need to go to the doctor. You're having that dream because you're exhausted." Now that she mentioned it, that did sound right. Plus, it was a logical, rational explanation. So, I dropped by the nearby clinic on my way home. I didn't often catch colds, so it was my first time there, but the new office was clean and the air conditioning was on. The cool air alone was refreshing. The consultation room was bright as well. The doctor looked more like a young businessman than a doctor. "What's wrong?" he asked, and I explained. "Is something wrong with me?" "Not necessarily. It's easy to find yourself sleep deprived during this season, so let's check your blood pressure." I put my arm down on the desk and he wrapped the blood pressure monitor around it, the soft cushiony thing. The soft throbbing of my veins reminded me of sleep paralysis and I didn't really like it. "It's a little low. Seems like you have anemia, so let's do a blood test." "Does that mean I have to get a needle?" "Are you scared?" "Yes, well..." I answered vaguely. The doctor smiled bitterly. "I'll do it so it doesn't hurt." The doctor skillfully pushed the needle into my arm. It was true. It didn't hurt much, but as the needle filled with my dark red blood, it felt like he was sucking my essence away. "I'll prescribe a week's worth of sleeping pills for now, and then we'll see how things go. The blood test results will be in sooner than that, so feel free to drop by whenever you're free." "Thank you very much." I liked that he was clinical and straight to the point. Although I hated needles. As I left the hospital after receiving my medicine, the evening summer heat hit me. I'd been sitting in air conditioning, so it felt even hotter than usual. Across the way was a red brick building. a thunderhead rose from the building's shadows like a picture. I admired the distinctly refreshing clouds against the deep blue sky. Suddenly, I heard thunder in the distance. It was about to rain. I came back to my senses and hurried home. As I got home and kicked back, I realized I was hungry. Cooking was such a hassle that I barely did it. I opened the fridge and found some canned food and beer. In this heat, a cold beer would really hit the spot. Actually, I'd gone to all the trouble of seeing the doctor, so it would probably be better to take the sleeping pills and hit the sack. I pondered what to do as I lit a cigarette. I decided for the time being to drink the beer. It was a little early to start drinking, but I'd no doubt get sleepy once I was drunk, and an empty stomach would wake me up during the night anyway. I ate some canned food alone and drank some beer. It might have seemed lonely to someone looking in, but that didn't bother me. That was just my nature. The evening sun shone down in the kitchen window. No rain outside, and turned the frosted glass orange. The noisy cicadas outside actually made it seem nice and quiet. I wasn't able to enjoy anything like this when I was in the dorm. I was so glad I'd moved here. At this rate, I might actually be able to sleep tonight. But then... someone knocked violently on the door. I jolted and spilt my beer on my knees. What the hell? Come on. I opened the door, muttering to myself. Standing there was... roughly 5 guys from class. That girl was there too. I quietly sighed my annoyance inside. Why the hell were they here? What's all this? I said. What? You don't see this? One of them held up a bag full of liquor bottles. I had been enjoying the quiet. Plus, the landlord was home. We couldn't be too noisy. That was why I hadn't invited anyone around yet. But I couldn't get rid of them either. I nervously let everyone inside. Hey, this place is pretty big, huh? Yeah, but it's old. Look at all those stains. It smells in here. Everyone started shooting their mouths off. It does smell a little moldy. Nah, it smells like a shriveled up toad. This was why I didn't like people. I looked over and that girl was cutting the ham she'd brought over in my kitchen. I panicked. Hey, don't use my kitchen without asking first. Why? I'm not doing anything troublesome, am I? I don't want you to make a mess. I really didn't want people going in the kitchen. Having outsiders in there felt like they were peeking on me naked. And I really didn't want girls in there. I'll clean it up later, but putting that aside for a moment. She looked down at my knife. This thing sure is sharp. Like, it's still brand new. I hate cooking, but I like keeping my knives sharp. You weirdo. Well, it was the truth. For some reason, I loved cooking utensils. Putting that aside, I turned to look at the room. Did you invite these guys? Well, they were all standing around in front of the co-op, talking about where to go drinking, and they said that your place is the only one they haven't been to yet. Well, crap. Stop complaining. You're probably having those bad dreams because you're all alone in this huge house. You should kick back and relax once in a while. I wanted to tell her she shouldn't bother, but I didn't think she'd listen. Oh well. I decided to keep drinking and hopefully forget my worries. I readied myself. We continued drinking into the night, and at some point I started to feel more than a little tipsy. The whiskey and large shochu bottles were empty. "I'm not done yet," someone said. "Ah, I'll go get some more." I stood up. They'd arrived with alcohol and snacks, so the least I could do was return the favour. It had been a while since I felt that way. The nearby liquor store was closed, but the vending machine was still working. I put 1,000 yen in and stared at the display, wondering what to get. I was shocked. An old woman's face reflected faintly in the display glass. A tiny face, and little else floated behind me. Her eyes glinted a sharp yellow. She looked somewhat familiar, but the creepiest thing of all was that it looked just like a ghost photo. I nervously turned around. Behind me, I saw nothing. I fought the terror inside and turned back to the display. The old woman's face was gone. Was it a ghost? No. At that moment I realized something. What had looked like eyes were just a reflection of the streetlights behind me. I thought they were eyes, so I imagined the rest of the face too. I really was drunk, huh? I smiled bitterly. Still afraid, I quickly bought some beer and whiskey, then hurried back without turning around once. I didn't really remember much after that. I had vague memories of flying into a rage and others holding me back, but when I woke up, it was morning. I was asleep on the floor, still in my clothes from the night before. I couldn't remember if I'd dreamt or not. My entire body hurt, perhaps thanks to the hangover. "You're awake." It was her voice. I looked around. She had cleaned the entire place and was sitting by herself nearby. When I thought about it, I really didn't like the fact that she'd seen my sleeping face. "Where are the others?" "They went home last night and you woke up while I was still cleaning." "You should have gone with them. You can just leave me alone, you know?" I said sharply. "Well, you see," she said with a smile, "you kept saying, 'Go away,' so much." Me? I couldn't remember. "Yeah, you kept saying, 'Women need to go,' over and over, like you were angry. So I thought I'd wait and see how you felt in the morning." That wasn't good. No matter how awkward I felt with women, that was still rude. "I'm sorry, that was..." My head rang as I sat up. It didn't bother me. You were drunk after all. But I stuck around because something else was bothering me. Hey, did you have a dream last night? I don't remember. I see. You were saying strange things in your sleep. Like what? I couldn't hear it very well, so I recorded it. You recorded it. She pulled out a small cassette recorder. I always use it to record lectures. You're very studious. Because I don't want to miss anything important. So, listen here. She pushed the button on the recorder. A voice flowed from the speakers. I can't really hear it. Yeah. She set the volume to max. Sa. A strange voice played back with the white noise. It was hoarse, but not a man's voice. Yeah, it sounded just like an old woman. I couldn't catch what she was saying, but it sounded like a chant. Is this really me? It is. I thought it was strange too. It was entirely different to your usual voice. That's why I recorded it. The tape suddenly slowed down, as though the batteries were dying. The voice got deeper, and then it stopped. A chill ran through me. What is that? Well, you were sleep-talking. It doesn't have any meaning. But still, muttering something I didn't understand in my sleep didn't make me feel good. Well, I don't think you have to worry about it though, she said, but her expression was still cloudy. I couldn't stop listening to the tape even after she went home. It was like being confronted with another version of myself. Or like the old woman was borrowing my mouth to speak. What on earth was going on? Thinking about it pained my already hungover head. I suddenly felt the urge to throw up. I ran to the toilet and vomited. As things settled down, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Several long strands of hair stuck to the tiles of the toilet floor. They weren't mine. That girl was the only one who came over last night with long hair. The hairs looked even more gross thanks to my hangover. That was why I didn't want girls coming over. But looking closer, there was a white hair mixed in with them. I didn't think she had any white hair, but then something was stuck to my face. I picked it off and jumped as I watched it fall. It was a long, thin white hair, and if it fell on my face, that meant I screamed and ran from the toilet. I grabbed the doorknob, making sure I could close it at any time, and nervously looked up. On the roof was a spider web. It wasn't a hair that had fallen on me, but a spider web. What the hell? All the power drained from my body. Yet there was a faint stain in the plaster on the roof. I couldn't help but think it looked like a face. The face of an old woman. I slept like a baby that night, thanks to the hangover and exhaustion, and didn't dream a thing. Yet, as I got better, I had that dream again. And on top of that, the figure that looked like an old lady had gotten closer, this time right next to my bed. Her muttering voice got louder as well. It was what woke me up. It was exactly the same as the voice she recorded of me while sleeping. As it dawned on me, my blanket grew heavy like iron. The sitting figure approached and peered down at me as I lay still, unable to move. I clearly saw her face. It suddenly hit me. "Did you finally remember?" The old lady grinned. And then I woke up. I was exhausted, my breathing ragged, and I was also terrified. It was the same face I'd seen in the vending machine. And the same face I'd seen in the roof of the toilet too. Had I been possessed by the old lady? No, that wasn't all. I had met her somewhere before. It wasn't very clear, but I definitely remembered her from somewhere. An indescribable fear overwhelmed me. What should I do? I should try to remember. Where and when had I met this old lady? I grabbed my box of cigarettes as things calmed down, but sadly, I was out. Having none made me want to smoke all the more. I stumbled outside. I couldn't find my favorite brand in the vending machine. I dropped by the nearby tobacco store. The morning sun filtered off the door glass. Inside was pitch black. "Excuse me?" I called out, and then... that old lady appeared. "How can I help you?" I screamed and ran. The store was usually manned by a regular old lady. So why was it her? She was in control of the whole city. The thought consumed my mind. I could do nothing but run. Right now. I had to get on the bus. I had to go somewhere far, far away. I hurried towards the bus stop. 2 high school girls stood at the bus stop, perhaps on their way to school. They turned around as I went to line up behind them. Both their faces were exactly the same. It was that old lady. I screamed and ran. I had no idea where to go. The sky spread out before me as I stopped in my tracks. Clouds rose high in the clear, sunny sky. Then they started to change shape into a giant face. That old lady. Those eyes carved into the clouds stared down at me, and I couldn't move, like my body was briefly paralyzed. Ambulance sirens approached me from behind. The sound changed as it passed me, like the Doppler effect. It changed into the voice of that old lady that I heard in my dreams. "Did you remember?" I heard the voice clearly. The old lady's face leaned over me in the sky. I knew I wouldn't be able to escape the city. No, maybe there was nowhere for me to hide at all. I ran back to my lodgings on trembling legs. Seeing as I was unable to go anywhere else, all I could do was stay home. But I'd no doubt have that same dream again, right? That old woman would attack me in my dreams. She might crush me. What should I do? I decided to stay awake. I locked myself in the house for 3 days straight. When I found myself starting to drowse, I woke myself up. I did whatever I could to stay awake, drinking coffee, walking around the room, and even singing in a loud voice. But I couldn't stay awake forever. I was reaching the end. The only option left was to sleep, and on the evening of the third night, someone knocked on the door. I was scared, but I flung it open. Then she stood there. "Come inside, quickly!" I yanked her inside. I feared that old woman would come running if I left the door open for too long. "What's wrong?" She looked at me, worried. I no doubt looked like shit. I could ask you the same question. You've never missed a day of school before, yet you haven't been in for the last 3 days. What happened? I could see from her expression that she really was worried about me. Maybe she was the only person who could really help me. Those instinctive feelings of dislike I'd had for her disappeared. Then I told her about everything I'd seen. I prayed she'd believe me. As I hoped, she deeply nodded. "I believe you. I noticed strange things happening too." "Like what?" "Like, I mentioned it could have been a zashiki warashi or something before, right? And so I wondered if something might have happened in this house in the past. So I looked into it and..." Her expression turned serious. "The Student Affairs Office knows nothing about this place, nor did any of the real estates I asked know about it either. How on earth did you find this place?" I desperately searched my memories. "It's no good. I can't remember. All I know is that I left the dorms and next thing I knew, I was here." "It's weird. There's definitely something going on with this house," she said decisively. "Hey, let's ask the landlord about it. They must know something." Come to think of it, I'd never once entered the main section of the house. I'd never once felt like discussing it with the landlord either, although I never once found that strange. With her support, I stepped outside. The entrance to the main house was open. I called out, "Ma'am, do you have a moment?" "Come in!" The landlord's voice rang out from inside the house. We stepped inside. We proceeded down the hall, lined with sliding doors. She asked me suspiciously, "You know where it is?" Somehow, my feet moved of their own accord, as though someone else was guiding me. They didn't listen to me at all. My feet stopped before a certain room. "Come in," the landlord said in a gentle voice. I opened the sliding doors. A chill ran down my spine as I looked inside. A futon lay spread out in the dim tatami mat room, and laying on it was that old lady. She had to be the landlord's sick mother that she'd spoken about. But "You finally came," the old woman said in the landlord's voice. "What's this all about?" Who on earth are you? The old woman's face morphed into that of the landlord, then back again. Was the landlord really her? Did you remember who I am and who you are? You've taken so long to remember that I've aged this much. Right at the end, her voice changed into that of the old lady. What do you want with him? My friend screamed. I'm not going to do anything, and he's been mine all this time anyway. He finally came back. No, I won't let you take him. She stood between the old lady and I. I stood there, dumbfounded. My memories slowly came back, clear as day. That's right, The old lady sat up. My friend turned around. I'll stop her, so you run. No, we go together. I grabbed her hand and ran from the room. The old woman didn't follow. We burst through the front door of my lodging. Lock it, quickly! She screamed. She didn't need to tell me. Of course, I made sure it was tightly locked from the inside. She sighed. So you were her target all along. I don't know why, but she set her sights on you and was trying to draw you in. I don't think that old woman's human. There's no way. I nodded as the words poured out of her mouth. Don't worry, I won't let her touch you, she said, her voice full of conviction. Why are you doing this for me? I mean... She seemed hesitant to speak. I like you. Ever since the first time I saw you. I wasn't able to say anything until now, but you mean a lot to me, and I want to be by your side. They were the exact words I wanted to hear. Thank you. I smiled. I like you too. I just realized it. Thanks to that woman. It's no time to be talking like that now. Yet, she smiled. But I'm glad. Let's fight her together. I won't let that monster do anything to you. I shook my head. I won't fight. Eh? But what are you going to do? She's heading this way right now. It's fine. My voice sounded oddly gentle. She's already here. Look. She followed my gaze and then gasped. The stain on the wall and roof got darker before our eyes, turning into a large human face. The old lady's face filled the room. This room is part of her, I said. What do you mean? The entire room shook. She stepped back from the walls. Suddenly, a large crack ran through them, and pieces of the wall fell down. She screamed. The inside of the walls were filled to the brim with white bones. No, this house was eating them. This lodging was inside the old woman. Bones fell and rattled at our feet. I grabbed her shoulder as she trembled in fear and spoke gently. There's no need to be afraid. It'll all be over soon. What will be over soon? I remembered why I'm here. It's just like she said. I've been hers all along. What are you saying? She made me. She looked at me like she had no idea what I was saying. Get it together. You're not thinking straight. No, now I'm thinking straight for the first time. I'd just forgotten everything until now. I've been here since the beginning. Yeah, you moved in here, right? Did you look into it? Whether I really lived in the dorms or whether I was getting a monthly allowance? They're all fake memories. So, she was trying to make you remember? That's right. I nodded. In order to carry out her plan. Plan? She's been alive for a long, long time. Longer than you can even imagine, I said. And because of that, she has a strange power. But her flesh still ages. In order to keep living, she needs to eat people. Those bones. She ate them. They were food. But why? Why does she want to live for so long? I don't know. I'm just here to help her carry out her plan. No. At the very least, you're alive too. And I won't let her take you. You're wrong. Eh? She looked at me suspiciously. My role isn't to become her food. My role is to gather her food. She finally realized what I was saying. No way. Finding the right food is hard, you see? I smiled silently. It's gotta be someone healthy. A girl who likes me and will jump in to save me. That's why I didn't like girls, so I don't get drawn in by thoughtless ones. She tried to flee the house, but I grabbed her as she tried to unlock the door. For sure, I was alive, I said to her gently as she tried to squirm free of my grip. That's why I unconsciously tried to stay away from girls. Why I tried not to like them. When I was drunk and told you to leave, that was no doubt the real live me making a brief appearance. But that person no longer exists. Will you become mine instead? I also like you. You'll be the perfect bait. She frantically shook her head. A dark red light shone through the hole in the wall behind her. A warm air blew in through it like a sigh. It was her mouth. I slowly pushed her over towards it, still in my arms. Then, goodbye. I smiled and pushed her away. She disappeared into the hole, her expression still full of disbelief. The mouth closed. The house shook happily and then finally stopped. Satisfaction filled me. I'd finally carried out my purpose. I went into the kitchen, laid out my bed, and then fell into a peaceful sleep. There was no more calming place than here. It was where I was born, after all. For that woman, I was the same as a knife, simply a tool to use. Morning arrived. I woke up. I slept real well the night before. I felt like I hadn't slept in forever. I wonder why. I couldn't remember why, but it felt like it had been a while since I last slept. For the first time in a while, I felt refreshed. Like I'd had a real good dream. The kitchen really was cool and refreshing. If only the bedroom were the same. But for some reason, I fell asleep in my normal clothes. I must have been exhausted. And perhaps thanks to the heat, I was drenched in sweat. As I went to get changed, I noticed something. A long strand of hair was wrapped around my hand. It was too long to be mine. It must have gotten stuck to me somewhere. Ah well. I brushed it off without thinking much more about it. I went outside, and it was another clear summer morning. I turned around. My lodging sparkled like new. The walls were pure white, like it had just been built. What a great house, I thought once again. The landlord was cleaning the garden in front of the main house. "Good morning!" I greeted her, and she turned her youthful, smiling face towards me. "You're going to school already?" "Yes, I have classes early this morning." "I see. Have fun." "By the way..." The landlord asked me a question. "Do you have a girlfriend?" "No, not yet. I'm not really good with girls, you see." "Come now, what are you saying?" She smiled. "When you get one, make sure to bring her around. I'll welcome any young girls with wide arms." "Yeah, I will soon." As I walked to school, I couldn't help but feel like I wanted a girlfriend. I wanted to make the landlord happy. I think she would be happy for me. I didn't know why, but that was how I felt. I felt like I had to do that for her. Seemed I no longer disliked women.